that it's harder to win a major event than it is in other sports.
Yeah, and actually I was going to say
I would say it's comparable to even like NASCAR in the sense if you look at like what's considered major in NASCAR. If NASCAR had what they were called the majors, it'd be what Daytona, Brickyard, Southern 500, and Coke 600. How many? I mean, who's got the record for that? Probably Petty or whatever. But I mean, I think the sports where it's the individual against a huge sea of other individuals is more difficult than I'm playing on a team.
And that's why you would categorize NASCAR in that.
Yeah,
because it's 1 versus 42.
Yeah, because I mean, not only do you have to beat 42 other people to win the race, but it has to be you only have 4 shots a year to do that too.
Well, and that's why I think it's. I'm sorry, I think you were.
No, go ahead.
Oh, and that's why I think it's huge. The fact that he's won. I mean, the four majors in tennis: Australian Open, French Open, U.S. Open, Wimbledon. I mean, he's won 15 of those. That's huge. That's huge.
And it's really hard to consistently do that in a sport.
Yeah, and
like tennis, especially with like now Federer's big component now these days is Nadal.
Rafael
Nadal wasn't in Wimbledon. He didn't play. He was injured. So I mean, that was even a huge break for him right there. Was that one of the other people that he's going against, individuals, the guy that most likely to beat him wasn't there.
And he officially, as of this morning, took over the world #1 ranking again.
Which makes absolute sense.
And here's the stunning thing, and I don't know if you've heard the stat, but not only has he won, 15 majors, but he yesterday with his appearance in the finals and his victory, he has made it to 7 consecutive Wimbledon finals.
And that's incredible. I mean,
and he's won 6 of those 7.
Yeah,
the only one he lost was to Nadal.
Yeah, it was last year. And here's the thing: like I can look at this and tell you that it is an exceptional accomplishment. That being said, will I forget about it within a week? Yeah, I probably will because I'm not really interested in tennis. But I feel like he deserves recognition, and I feel like, if Tiger Woods ever breaks the record of, what's his name now? The Jack Nicklaus, in golf,
which he probably will.
Which he's got a very good chance.
He's on pace. He
hasn't been doing much winning this last year. He hasn't won any this year. He kind of needs to win like one every year for like the next 5 or so years.
The next major is the British Open coming up next week.
Right. So I mean, if that ever happens, that'll also be a big deal too. Especially since, technically speaking, golf is a very difficult sport. It's not a very athletic sport, but it is a very difficult sport to play. Where tennis is a very athletic sport and difficult sport. And I was actually watching the highlights of that match earlier this morning on ESPN
of the
News.
Wimbledon final.
Yeah, and it was some crazy stuff they were doing. Roddick, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this is probably the best he's ever played in like tennis. He was out of his mind.
Yeah. What happened was, it's kind of the thing where his career, and you can't, if you're listening to this on iTunes, you can't see what I'm doing. But his career kind of did this level down, and now it's kind of up again.
He peaked in like 2003 when he won the U.S. Open. He won that major.
Yes.
But
he's got one major. Yep.
But then since then,
that's impressive. Nice job.
I remember that because everybody was talking because it's the American
that won the U.S. Open.
Yeah. Well, and because tennis is like soccer and that it's a very international sport dominated mostly by non-Americans.
Yeah. And what's interesting, one last thing to say about this, and I heard this on the broadcast yesterday, and it's kind of sad in a way, but they say that Andy Roddick is one of the better tennis players that's ever seen, that the sport's ever seen. But his biggest thing that is sad for him is that his career peak years were they shadowed Roger Federer's, and that's his big thing. But that happens, and you can probably find that.
Yeah,
in every sport.
There's for every big name, there's a smaller name who was very good that just came at the wrong time, and some guys dominate an era and it's only because there's no competition, and that happens in every sport. It's the cycle.
Yeah. But I mean, if good for Federer, but if Andy Roddick retired tomorrow, I would agree with what they said yesterday about him being one of the better, one of the better tennis players.
Yeah, he's very good. He's not great, and that's basically all there is to say.
At least if you retire tomorrow, at least he has a major. I mean, he doesn't have 15, but at least he has one.
Yeah,
because think about it.
Again,
even one,
it's very difficult. Again, you have all those people that you have to beat. And you only get 4 times a year to try to do that.
And also, especially in tennis, think about the fact that in those majors, I was going to say those major tournaments, in those majors, there's 5-6 rounds. So it's just huge.
Yeah, it's a tournament.
So good for him.
It's hard to win a tournament when it's not for the biggest prize in your sport. Time to switch gears now. This has all been a very good time today talked about some very happy moments. Tony Stewart winning, Kyle Busch wrecking, Federer winning the second record. Time for some somber stuff to talk about because there was some really sad news over the weekend, which is, I'm sure you've heard because it's been big news, which was former Tennessee Titan and Baltimore Ravens quarterback Steve McNair was shot and killed on Saturday in his condo in Tennessee, I believe. And like with Nick Aidenhart, right? Yeah. On this show, we like to just say again that our condolences, and I think it's worth noting because it's a very sad thing. And I find for myself, I had a lot of respect for him. There's a lot of details of his life that are coming out right now that's been going on for like the last year or so that I find very disappointing in him, to find out that he had left, apparently had been dating this woman, this 20-year-old woman on the side, while still being married and having children and all that. And it's kind of like, you know, not only is it said that he's died, but also find out that he's really not that great of a guy, it seems like.
Yeah, it's just, it's a shame. And you know, of course, like we said with Nick Aidenhart, you know, you wish the best. Because think about it. Just think about for that family for you know the children and the wife.
What his wife's going through. Well, and she's got to be one part happy, 2 part angry.
Well, and I was just gonna say, and it's not just that she's just lost, you know, probably the love of her life and her husband, but now to add salt to the wound is this that's coming out.
Oh, and she might have known that he's been doing. He might have been living at home. So if she's known, even is it relief? Is it sadness? Is it both? It probably is both. Probably mixing between, you know, and that's a whole string of emotions you can't, you know, really predict on somebody, and I wouldn't wish on anybody. But it's a really sad story, and to me it really hit me when I heard it, because a lot of people, I'm just now, especially the last couple months, there have been people that have been dying that I recognize and I remember watching do this, that, or whatever. You know,
it does seem like it's been quite a bit recently.
Because when you're a child, people die.
But you never,
people always die at the same click. It's just you don't know who they are. Now we do. I remember watching Steve McNair play. It was just over a year ago he retired. So it's not, I can't sit here and say, you know, that it was not like it was so many years ago. I mean, it was very recently that he was a star in the National Football League. And he was very young, 35. Yeah, so I mean, it hits you harder, I would say.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
And so I'm not even a Titans fan. I can't imagine what Ryan feels right now.
Yeah,
because he actually had like a McNair jersey and all that.
Yeah, it's best wishes to the family.
But anyway, Racin and Stuff memorial tribute. That's gonna be another lower third. I'm gonna make later. All right, but that is a good segue. Since he was we were gonna do this anyway, but being he was a member of the Tennessee Titans and a respected member of that organization for a long time, it's a good segue into our next step of our NFL Preview 2009.
NFL Preview 2009.
And
I can't say it without smiling anymore.
That's fine. Maybe we'll just use the sound clip next time. But today is the AFC South, and there's been some decent turnover. I think this is a division up for grabs this year. So we'll just go in the order. We decided we're going to talk about the teams in the order of
last year's
standings. So the first team up is, of course, the Tennessee Titans, which were 13-3 last year. And there have been some decent changes. Of course, the obvious one is they lost Albert Haynesworth to free agency, who is now a Washington Redskin. Otherwise, the team is mostly intact. Chris Johnson and Lindell White, the formerly known as Smash and Dash duo, return. Kerry Collins came back. Vince Young's still there for what it's worth.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you know, the team is pretty much the same. Still don't have any receivers. Still don't really have any offense. They just lost their big, you know, beast of a nose tackle.
Yeah. The Titans with Kerry Collins, and this is of course no disrespect to him. It's very similar to what we talked about, I think, both last Monday and Friday. He is pretty far, in my opinion, from a weapon. I would say he
is absolutely a game manager.
Yes, completely. And you knew that's where I was going with that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I guess, you know, that was great. He game managed them to to a 12-3 because he didn't start the first game, right? Didn't Vince Young start?
Young did, but he closed out the game.
Okay, so he basically game managed them to a 13-3 season. So you know, but he's not a weapon.
Yeah, and that's the thing that worries me about